All right, students, welcome back. Welcome. So just this for a second. Perfect. All right, guys, welcome back. Hopefully you guys have been doing well. I'm sure some of you guys are in and out of school right now, for either AP exams, all the good stuff going on. If you have any questions for me before we get started, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to lead you guys through a short warm-up here and then get everybody started with the practice test. Can everybody give me a thumbs up? Can you guys just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you have, first of all, if you're here, just say hello or give me a thumbs up so that I know who to address and who we can address. And then secondly, can everybody confirm that you guys have your test materials? If you guys don't have your test materials, you guys can look in the description below this video with all of the ACT and SAT released exams. For those that are in our classroom programs, you guys know which test I'd like you to take. I posted those, so make sure that you have those test forms ready to go. And then we'll get started. But again, guys, as soon as you get into class today, can everybody give me a thumbs up so that I know you're here, that I know you're present, and then we'll get started. Guys, the way that this is going to work for today, if you haven't been with us for one of these before, the way that this typically works is that we go through, hey, Lachlan, welcome. For those that are taking the practice test today, and guys, by the way, please use Lachlan as an example. If you are here taking the practice test or if you're here just for the live stream in general, please make sure that you give a thumbs up like Lachlan did in the chat. If you don't see his thumbs up, you guys can just, or if you want to remain anonymous for one reason or another, you guys can just give me a thumbs up below the video. But just, I want to make sure that everybody that's here is present and accounted for. And if you guys have any questions going forward, you guys can ask those in the chat. Okay. But again, the plan for today, as it always is we're going to go through a short warm-up, make sure that you guys have all your materials, everything like that. Then we're going to get the students who are starting the practice test, the ones that are, if you're taking the full practice test with us today, we're going to get you guys started. And then I'm going to stick around for another hour or so on this live stream just to make sure that everybody has started, everybody that's taking the test is good to go. And then we're going to sign off. And again, after that first hour, if you guys are, I think that it'll become pretty clear what you guys are, how to take this test. I don't think it's too hard, and it's pretty self-explanatory with the video that we post and all that good stuff. Okay, guys, again, so if you're here, if you're present, give us a hello in the chat or a thumbs up like Lachlan did so that we know that you guys are here and ready to go. And then we'll get started here in just a second. Okay, so guys, everybody else, as we get started here, one of the really important things that we always do before we get started with the test, and I think it is absolutely essential that everybody does this before you guys start the real test, is that I always want you guys to warm up. It is very, very, very important that you warm up before the test, because just like everything else you do in your life, you always warm up. If you guys play a sport, right? If you play a sport, or if you're in the play, or if you do any extracurricular activity, you don't just show up to opening night of the musical or the play, right? And you're like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing tonight, right? Like 2 minutes before showtime. You never do that, right? You don't play a sport and show up like 2 minutes before game time and like, I guess this is gonna go well today, I think. No, it's definitely not, right? That's the whole point. And what's amazing to me as I've gone through this more and more and seen more students is how few students actually warm up before this test. The SAT and the ACT are infinitely more important than any single sports game or any, unless you're going to be a professional athlete, and some of you might, but by and large, unless you're going to be a professional athlete, this test is so much more important than an individual sports game, right? Or an individual musical or show, right? This is so much more important. Yet it's amazing how often we see students that just show up on test day and they're like, well, I guess I'm doing this today. That is not a good approach. I can't tell you how many times we've done these practice test live streams And when I get the score reports back from students that are in our classrooms or students that send us their score reports that from anywhere in the world that take this test, I cannot tell you how often that the first section, whether that be ACT English or SAT reading, how often we see students miss like 5 of the first 10 questions. And then we see students go on a roll for like 50 questions in a row. They might only miss 2 out of 50, yet they missed 5 out of the first 10. And what that tells me is not that the 5 out of the first 10, there's not an order for either of the first 2 sections of these exams. There's not an order of difficulty for the SAT reading or ACT English. What that tells me is that everybody's just showing up and nervous, right? There's always going to be some of those nerves. There's always going to be some of that nervous energy. But doing practice problems and reminding yourself why you're there, that dissipates a lot of those nerves and nervous energy. We have to be doing this stuff, right? It just is so important. And so as we've talked many, many times, and what I'd like everybody to do right now, and we're going to spend maybe 5 minutes doing this. It doesn't have to be a long warm-up, okay? But when you're standing in line, right, you're going to be getting in line ready to register for this test. You're going to be standing in line with your phone, with your friends maybe, and a lot of you are going to, many students are going to be talking about, oh, I'm going to, Brett, it wasn't that long ago that I was in high school. Oh my God, I'm going to fail this, right? I'm going to do so badly. Even if you've warmed up and done everything I've asked of you and your last practice test was super strong and you did great, there's still that social anxiety that comes with, like, if your friend says they're going to fail, you're going to fail, right? You think that you're going to fail it too. That's such a bad way to go into this. Instead, I'm not asking you to carry on a 700-page book, right? I'm not asking you to be over in the corner being like, oh, wait, I got to do that. If your friends are there, you can talk to your friends. But you have all of our StarU content is on your phone. So make sure that you're opening it and doing, before you leave for the test, do a practice reading passage or a practice English passage. Okay, just read it, right? And just maybe do a few questions. Don't overwhelm yourself. The whole point is just that you're focused on reading, that you know what you're about to do. On the flip side, once you get there, right, once you get to the actual testing location, that's when I want you guys to be doing on your phone your StarU practice problems. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. Can everybody please open their StarU student accounts? I'll post the how to download and access this. This is all free, by the way. So again, I don't know why you wouldn't do this. It's free to download. These practice problems that I'm going to ask you to do for warm up at least are free. So again, very, very, very important that you guys are doing this. Guys, for anybody that has any questions, I just saw a question posted. If you have any questions, just hang on for a second. We're going to get everybody started with the practice test. And like I said, I'm going to be around for another hour or so to answer any questions related to just general SAT, ACT stuff. But in the meantime, can everybody confirm with the 2 thumbs up in the chat if you are taking the practice test with us today? Can you give me 2 thumbs up in the chat if you have your StarU student account open and ready to go? You guys can see it in the background of my screen. If you haven't worked with us, StarU, download and register free. Hey guys, so you guys can, I'm giving you guys the logins there. And like I said, I want everybody to be doing some practice problems right now, okay? So those links that I just posted, okay, I'd like everybody to open their StarU student account, okay? You guys can see the same one that I have in the background of my screen. When you have opened the account, you guys can click Lessons and Lessons and Practice Problems. Okay, lessons and practice problems here. And then when you open the lessons and practice problems, if you're taking the ACT today, I want you to just click ACT English. And I just want you to do any practice problems on the app, right? If you click grammar quiz number 1 and then click the tap to start button at the bottom, you have 8 practice problems that deal with a significant number of the grammar concepts tested on the ACT English test. Okay, if you're taking the SAT today, go back. And I'm going to click SAT at the top. And if you want to do SAT reading, you can. Or if you want to do SAT writing and language, you can do that as well. The SAT writing and language test is it's comparable. You're still reading stuff, but it might be a little bit easier than the SAT reading. Okay? I'm going to have to go blow my nose for in a second, guys. I'm having some allergies. Okay, but in any case, Can everybody confirm that you guys, can everybody say good to go in the chat or give me a thumbs up, okay, somewhere. Just confirm that you guys are doing these practice problems. If you finish a lesson right, let's say you go to ACT English and you want to just do an easier lesson, which is verb tense, and you want to do 5 practice problems or read about those, I want you to do these 5 practice problems, and then when you're done, right, when you're done, I want you to go back and just do another one. I want you to spend, let's say, to the 50, so about 8 minutes from now, we'll get started with the actual test, but I want you to be warming up for the next, let's say, 8 minutes. Okay, can everybody, again, confirm that you guys are doing that now? Click pronouns, right, if you're doing the, and just maybe even read about pronouns. You don't even necessarily have to do practice problems. The point is that I want you to get your mind focused on the SAT and the ACT that you're about to take, rather than worrying about the 9 million other things that are probably going on in your lives. For the next 3 hours, and for the real test, it's even more important, you want to be extremely present and not thinking about other things. On a timed test, the moment you start thinking about something else is huge. It's a huge detriment to do that, right? We want to be extremely present for these 3.5 hours, and this type of warm-up will really get you guys started in thinking about what I want you to be thinking about going into this exam, okay? I'm going to go blow my nose real quick. We're going to take about 5 minutes, guys. Again, you're on StarU. You're going to click SAT or ACT practice problems right here, and this is the screen you should see. Okay, and I want everybody to be doing that for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we're going to get started with the real exam here. Okay, if you don't have an exam form, you guys can find an exam form in the description below this video, and I will be right back. Take care of these allergies. Okay, sorry guys. All right. Hey Pranav, that's awesome, man. I'm super thrilled. If you guys ever, I'll post about that in just a second. But if you guys ever have any questions about SAT or ACT, I'm gonna post a playlist for that. My dog's in here, guys. It's a mess here Saturday morning. Come on, get out. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, Pranav, that's awesome, man. So guys, we'll get started here in just a second. For those that weren't on here just a second ago, we are doing a short warm-up on the StarU tutoring app. Again, you can access this from your phone, so I expect everybody to be doing this. If you're taking the practice test with us today, I expect all of you guys to be doing these practice problems. It's very important that you do this. Okay, because just like on real test day, I don't want you to be thinking about, okay, what am I supposed to be doing the next thing? Pranav, you're a great example of this. If you're scoring a 1540 minimum, first of all, congratulations, that's awesome, and I mean that's just in the top 0.5% of all students that take this exam. So incredible. But one of the things that we talk about for those real-time videos that he just mentioned, one of the things we always talk about in those videos is taking away all of the thoughts. Right, I've worked for a number of different companies, and while you guys are warming up, this is just kind of a side note. I've worked for a number of different companies, and it's amazing to me, through that process and through me being trained in this, how complicated everything. When I was a kid, I was a horrible student because I didn't care, and that's a horrible trait, by the way. So don't. That's not me saying I'm cool, because I'm not. Okay, that's a horrible trait to not care about how you do, but when you don't think about the next day, remember I was talking about being really present, I didn't think about college. I didn't think about the next day. It was like, what am I going to do tonight? That was my thought process. And while that's a horrible trait in a lot of ways, I was very, very present as a kid. I was very like, this is what I'm doing right now, and nothing else matters. And that's a very, again, kind of a selfish way to go about life, because you're not really thinking about, what's next or whatever, what your parents do for you or whatever. But at the same time, for test taking and test taking alone, that simplicity of thinking, of just being very, very into it, not thinking about, like, I worked for a company that wanted me to color code, like tell students to color code each question type. It's like, if you're color coding each question type, you're not thinking about just taking the test. You're thinking about, oh, that's a yellow type of question, so I got to answer that one this way. That takes so long. That can work. That's not to say that it can't work, but it takes 100 hours of practice in order to recognize that specific yellow question type or red question type, whatever you have highlighted, right? So you can do this way, way faster, guys, by simplifying this whole thought process. And that's what I'm trying to get everybody to do. Yeah, Pranav, that's awesome. So guys, use that as an example. Okay, use those comments in the chat as an example. If you've scored 1,600, that's in the top 0.001%. It's like you're outscoring, I think there's 1,000 students that score 1,600 every year in the world. There's 2 million students that take this test, and there's 1,000, I think. There's 3,000 that score 36 on the ACT, and there's 1,000 that scored on the SAT. Or per test, maybe. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, so maybe 5,000, let's call it. That's 5,000 out of 1 million, or out of 2 million. So Pranav, that's unbelievable. Even a 1,500 plus score is unbelievable when you compare it to how many students take this test. It is extremely, extremely important. Yeah, guys, welcome. If you're just subscribing, welcome. That's awesome. Welcome to the first live stream if you guys are seeing us for the first time. We're taking a practice test today for those that are getting on here, but I just cannot stress how important the reason this warm-up is so critical, or at best simplifying the test. The reason I want you guys to warm up is because then it pulls your thoughts from everything that's complicated in life, right? Your friend's telling you you're going to fail. I'm going to blah, 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 right? Whatever. It pulls your thoughts from that thing and it puts it towards what's actually productive. And that's what simplifying is. I would not have done, my mom is a math teacher, so every single time, and you'll see this in the real-time videos, I write everything out. I never had too much pride in anything because my mom would just be like, nope, you're writing that out, right? It was unbelievable. But if I wouldn't have had that type of thing going, right, there's no way I would have put in the work that a lot of you guys do, that I'm so proud of, that so many of you guys do in order to increase your score. I lucked out in that way that she happened to be a math teacher I was doing math drills since I was like 2 years old, and then I loved to read. Those two things, guys, doing math drills and loving to read will make you an exceptional test taker if you can be really present on test day. Those two things and those two things alone. Is that crazy? Yeah, guys, that's yeah, guys, I just that's Mission MIT. That's unbelievable. Right? I mean, if you guys are at MIT, that's unbelievable. That's why we started these videos. As you're warming up today, take everybody that's in the chat that's making these great comments, and they're great because you guys are doing well and putting in the time and the effort. For anybody that hasn't taken the real test yet or applied to college, who's warming up, who's taking the practice test today, take those comments that everybody's posting and take those for what they're right. Take those and use those as motivation to discipline yourself to do the things that are necessary to do better, like warming up before the test. It is so critical. Okay, guys, so anybody that's on here, I'm going to answer general questions in just a second, but anybody that's taking the practice test, either the SAT or the ACT practice test with us today, can everybody give me a thumbs up if you guys are ready to go if you're taking the practice test? If you're not taking the practice test and you're just on, and you want to discuss the SAT or the ACT, just hang on for a second, and I'm going to answer questions for the next hour as soon as we get everybody started. But if you are actually physically taking the SAT or the ACT practice test, you have your materials in front of you right now. Can you give us a thumbs up so that I know you're ready to go? And then we will get started. So I'm going to start with ACT test takers in just a second. If you're taking the ACT exam, here's the instructions for the ACT exam. ACT. Okay, let's see here, guys. So if you see this, so this is the ACT proctoring video. Okay, so here are the instructions. If you're taking the practice test with us today, again, this is only if you're taking the practice test. If you're not, you can just hang tight for a second. You wonder why I keep getting up? It's because my cat and my dog are going crazy outside. Okay, but if you're taking the practice test with us today, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna mute this. You're gonna mute this live stream with me. You're gonna mute that, and you're gonna put it up in the corner. However, please do not exit out of this live stream if you're taking the practice test today. If you're not taking the practice test, you guys can go enjoy your Saturday. Okay? Guys, again, I can't tell you, I'll comment on all these great comments here in just a second, but just for the practice test takers, if you are taking the practice test, please do not exit out of this, because like I said, I'm going to be on this for another hour or so, and during that hour, I'll answer any general questions related to these tests. But for right now, if you're taking the real practice test today with us, I want you to mute this video, mute this live stream, put me up in a corner somewhere, right? Just you don't have to listen, and then mute it, put it up in the corner, and then when I post these videos for the actual proctoring video, I want you guys to start that proctoring video and then leave me up in the corner so that if you do have any questions for the next hour or so while I'm on, general questions related to the proctoring stuff, you can ask those. But anybody that's taking the test, yeah, if you're not taking the practice test, do not mute this video. Okay? Okay, if you're not taking the practice test, you guys can just hang here for a second and I'll answer any general questions. But if you are taking the practice test, mute this live stream, put me up in the corner, and then you're going to start the video. So here's the ACT proctoring video. If you are standard timing, I'll post if you have accommodations, I'll post that in a second. But for standard timing, here's the ACT proctoring video. You guys can click that now if you're taking the practice ACT, then mute this live stream, put me up in the corner somewhere. In case you do have any questions, then you can just go right there. You don't have to search for it. And then you can start that proctoring video. Don't stop the proctoring video unless prompted for breaks. Otherwise, there'll be timers on the screen. It will lead you through the entire proctoring, the entire ACT exam. Okay, for those that are taking the test today, good luck. And you guys can get started now if you're taking the practice ACT. If you're taking the practice ACT and you have accommodations, you have some accommodations timing, you can click this video. Okay, same instructions there. Same instructions. Yeah, guys, if you're trying to access the test, because for today we're just doing this. If you want to access a practice test form, you can always just go into the description below this video. If you want to take a practice test today, you can always just go in the description below this video and find a practice test form. But if not, you can. If you don't want to if you're not here to take the practice test and just want to generally talk about the SAT and the ACT, just hang tight for a second, and I'll answer any general questions here in just one moment. Okay, same instructions for SAT test takers. If you're taking the SAT today, here's the standard timing video for SAT test takers. Okay, same instructions for SAT test takers. If you're taking the SAT, have your test form ready to go. The proctoring video that I'm about to post, put this live stream up in the corner, mute the live stream so that you know that you can ask questions if you have them. Otherwise, you're going to click this video that I'm about to post. You're going to open that, and then you can get started. Okay. So here's the SAT proctoring video for standard timing, and then finally, guys, here's the SAT proctoring video for extended timing. All right, everybody, so if you're getting started with the practice test today, good luck. I hope you guys do great. For anybody that's in our classroom programs, I'll post more instructions on how you can access the score reports, and you can send in those score reports for anybody that's in the classroom program. So check back with the classroom group to access that. Otherwise, if you're taking the practice test today, guys, good luck. I know you guys are gonna do great, and yeah. Good luck, guys. You guys are going to crush it. And again, for classroom students, make sure that you check back in with the classroom group to see the instructions for how you can send that in and how we can get your results. All right, guys, so that's it for the students that are taking the test today. For students that are not taking the test but just have general questions related to the SAT and the ACT, I'm going to be on, like I said, for the next hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, we'll see, and answering any general questions related to the SAT or the ACT. So please don't hesitate to do that. We had a question here about when we'll release another SAT video. I'm glad you guys are liking those videos. We will be releasing one next week, 2 next week actually. I think an SAT, forget what's on the schedule. No calculator section, I think, and an SAT reading section. No, an SAT writing and language section maybe. I forget. We have a schedule that I have to film. It's on me, guys. If you're ever wondering, our digital editor is always wondering why I'm running late in filming those, but it's always on me. So in any case, if you guys have... let me just post this real quick. For SAT, if you're taking the SAT, here's the playlist. Yeah, we're releasing 2 before the June 5th test, guys. Yep, great question. So we're releasing 2 videos before the June 5th test. Here's the SAT playlist for all current videos. I'm sure we have a few. I know we have a few more on the live stream. But I think we have about 25 real-time section videos right now. And like I said, we'll probably be releasing 2. We're going to release 2 more, and if I can get the filming done, 3 more before next. Maybe I'll do a live stream to get a 3rd one in before the June 5th test. Okay, but here's the playlist for all SAT real-time videos, and then let me give you guys the playlist for all the ACT real-time videos. Yeah, so like I said, we have about 25 SAT videos and 25 ACT videos. So about 50 total. English question. Yeah, so guys, if you're trying to improve, you guys can see it in the background of my screen. If you're the app, the StarU app. So if you have questions about StarU, I'll get to the English question for to apply to the SAT. How does that not work? When you don't copy a link into, sorry guys, when you actually try to type out a link into YouTube now, into YouTube chat, it doesn't. Yeah, so as Mission MIT just said, it does depend on the country when you're applying, but at least the College Board there that I just posted will have all of the info you need. Nikhil, welcome. No, yes. Yeah, so if you get in the 99th percentile, you're doing great. Okay? The 99th percentile is like I said, for who was it? Pranav said that he got a 1600 on a few practice tests. If you get a 1600, I think it's 1,000 students per test, so it's about 5,000 students per year scoring the 1,500. That's out of 2 million students. That means that you're scoring equal. You can't go any higher than that. So you're scoring equal or better than you're scoring better than 1.955 million, 1.955 million students. No, 1.995 million students. You're scoring better than, and you're scoring equal to the other 5,000. So if you get a 1,600, I think on the ACT it's about 10,000 that score a perfect score every year. So if you're getting a 1,600, you're in like the most elite company. 99th percentile is 99th percentile for a reason, and it is. It's unbelievable. The reason they call it that is because it's 99th percentile per test, and it's unbelievable. So yeah, if you're scoring anything above 1,500 or anything above really like 33 or above or 1,500 or above on the SAT, you're in an unbelievable company. Good question. Question, who was it that asked... Yeah, and emulating it on the real test is all about doing it. So I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, so SAT writing and language is all about. I'm showing this on the screen. We had a couple students ask about the English section for the SAT. I cannot stress enough to start our StarU app. Right, I wish I had my book here. We write all of our own content. All of our current tutors write our own content, and if it helps in any way, that this content, right? There's so many resources now, like Khan Academy. But what we try to do in everything that we do is simplify everything. In some ways, Khan Academy is unbelievable for what they've done and all the stuff that they continue to do. But in some ways, some of their descriptions are so complicated. Like they talk about phrases that are just talking about in a positive phrase should not be as complicated as they make some things. So we try to simplify everything. For anybody that's watched those real-time videos, I'm just posting a link. All of our books are written and edited by current SAT tutors. And what you're seeing in the background of my screen is our StarU tutoring app. Okay, StarU has all of the content from our current SAT and PSAT National Merit tutorials now, or ACT tutorials. If you click SAT Writing and Language, here, right here in front of you, you can see it on my screen, are all the major concepts that you can possibly memorize related to grammar on the SAT. If you click punctuation, okay, punctuation, this lesson chapter alone, on both the ACT English section and the SAT Writing and Language section, if you can memorize every punctuation rule related to the English grammar, right, just how you would write something, if you can memorize every punctuation rule, I guarantee you could score exceptionally high on the Writing and Language or on the ACT English section, because there are 10 out of 44 questions deal with punctuation. 10 out of 44, that's almost 25% of the test. Okay, 25% of the questions deal directly with punctuation. If you can memorize everything there is to know about sentence building blocks, punctuation rules, I promise you'll do well. And again, all of this is free on StarU. So I highly encourage you guys to download the app. You can do it on your phone. It has all the content from our books that you just saw there. So I highly recommend it. On top of that, we also have a number, that playlist that I just posted there for the SAT videos. We have a number of SAT writing and language videos. One of our most popular videos on the entire channel is actually an SAT writing and language video that I encourage you guys to check out. Yeah, if you know all the rules, if you feel like you know all the rules for the grammar section, then it's all about just applying them on test day. As Pranam just said earlier, right, just got to emulate that on the real test. That's right. And again, one of the things that I think we do particularly well in these YouTube videos that nobody ever addresses, and it just drives me crazy because like I said, I've worked for a number of different companies talking about all this stuff for the last 10 years or 8 years or whatever it's been. The thing that helped me the most when I was a kid, by far, was simplifying everything. If you guys really want to know the secret to the SAT, I'll give it to you right now. Okay? I'll give it to you right now. You guys will see this in the background of my screen. Before I do that, though, let me just make sure you guys. Yeah, again, download StarU if you haven't already, and be doing as many practice problems on StarU as you can. 1 second. I'm gonna give you guys. I'll show you guys the secret of this entire test in just a second. If you guys can believe it. Oh, yeah, guys, give me 1 second from Mission MIT. Give me 1 second on. Guys, it's funny that you say that MIT because the comment that Mission MIT just made. Guys, let me hear creative free. Let me see if you guys have it here. Can you do it here? I don't know why though. Sometimes it's about a different. If you're in a different country, sometimes that affects it too. I think this should work though. I would try all of these platforms, guys. If you can't access it there, try it. You can also access it on your phone from like the web version, so you can click that link on the phone on your phone. It kind of depends on country, unfortunately. Apple has become very strict. Google has a little bit more, but if you're in a different country, that might be the issue. I apologize if there's any issues logging in. It might also be a version issue. We just came out with a new version of the app, so keep trying. If you can't log in for whatever reason, let us know. But yeah, keep trying if you can. But you should be able to log in. We had a student have that same issue last week. Yeah, guys, learning more about vocabulary is just about reading more. If you guys are from a different country and you don't typically read if you don't read English novels as much, I would read as much as you can. As I said before, the simplicity of this test all comes from doing the simplest things, and it's all about reading. If you want to do really well in the SAT reading section or SAT writing and language section, as simple as it sounds, you guys probably hear this all the time, and it's like, well, how does that help me? It helps you so much. Mission MIT, that stuff like those comments. Again, it's that's why we started this. I just cannot express enough that I really appreciate that comment. We want to give you guys access to this, right? My whole goal in this and starting the YouTube channel and StarU is to get everybody at the same starting line. And then if you want to work hard, if you're going to work hard, everybody should have the same access to the materials that everybody else does. Or at least at a very, very inexpensive rate. I think we charge $5 a month for some of these advanced features of StarU. But we don't want you guys to be limited in what you're capable of. But at that point, you got to work hard. So anybody that goes to MIT, right? Anybody that goes to MIT is unbelievable. You have worked unbelievably hard, and you should be very, very proud of your own accomplishments because 99.9% of it is you. If we can provide the resources, if we can provide a few helpful hints, then that makes all the difference, and I really appreciate comments like that. But it's 99.9% you if you guys go to any of these elite schools, so you guys should feel very, very proud of yourselves and proud of your accomplishments as you continue to improve. Okay, but I'm going to give you, so again, going back to the simplicity of this test and understanding this simplicity, it is so, so critical that we do not overthink the SAT or any test. Okay? So if we look at the SAT, let me give you guys an example. The first thing that we always hear from students, always, is how do I improve my score, right? Or why can't I improve in this section, or whatever it might be. The first thing that everybody needs to know, and the first thing and the most important thing that I can tell you guys right now, is to understand the scoring of the SAT test. That seems so simple, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have looked at the scales, but you haven't looked at them without thinking. Most of you, not everybody, but most students have not looked at the scales, outside of your own scoring your own practice test. You might have a sense as to how it works, but it's not the same when you're thinking about it in context of your own test. You have to look at the scores and the scales. This is the secret to test taking. I'm convinced of it because this is how I did well despite being a bad student in school. This is how I did well on these tests. I read a lot, okay? I lucked out because my mom's a math teacher and demanded that I know a lot about math, okay? And I've forgotten a lot of those things. For anybody that's seen our real-time SAT videos, you guys will know that I always comment on those that my mom would kill me because I've forgotten a lot of the concepts, and I haven't, going back to my bad student reference, I haven't chosen, even being a tutor, chosen to memorize everything. But that simplicity, choosing not to do that, helps me. Because I'm never going to be the student that was going to get a 1600, but could I get a 1500 plus score? Yes. There's a certain level that you have to achieve to get to a 1600, which all depends on work ethic. If you're at a 1500 now, to get to a 1600 is all about work ethic. Because there are certain concepts that they're so obscure that you just have to know, or you have to have the mental fortitude on the reading section to push through. Right? Our most popular video on the entire channel is one on a reading section where I think I got 50 out of 52. And it's the point I'm making is that I was never going to be the student. Maybe if I got lucky on one day to get 52 out of 52, but I was content with 50. I don't know if I would have changed my mindset to be a perfectionist to get a 52 out of 52 if I would have ever been able to achieve that. Because by thinking only about 50 or doing the best I could and being very present, okay, the thing to do about being very present with this test is that it doesn't make you think about what you're not going to be able to do. It makes you think about what you can do. I knew that I knew enough math concepts to get a 750 plus score on the SAT exam. Did I know enough to get an 800? No, but that was never my goal. That was never my thought process. It was just to go in, take it on that day so that I could get out of it and not listen to my parents that day because I did what they said, and then I could go do my own thing that night. That was my only thought process. It wasn't even thinking about the next day, and that's really, that's problematic for everything else in your life. But for test taking, being very present like that and doing the things that are in front of you is think about what you're doing, not how you're doing. Okay, and the best way to say this, if you guys are looking at if you're looking at my screen now, is to very overwhelmingly understand the score report. And I did this. I promise you, if there's one thing I did better than any student ever, maybe ever in the history of these tests, it was to find the minimum value that I needed to get, because I did this in school all the time. Instead of thinking about getting an A plus in school, I always thought about how do I keep a B minus, right, and not get a C and get grounded, or how do I keep an A minus so that I can maybe get a better GPA. But it was never the next step. Like, how do I work as hard as I possibly can to take a step up? It was always, how do I achieve kind of the minimum? And again, that's a really problematic way to go about life, but it's a very effective test taking, because you're not worried, you're not stressed ever when you sit down to take the test. You're worried about, how do I get to this number of questions? And like I said, this is the key. This is the trick to the entire SAT exam. Once you understand this, and once you embrace this, because there's a difference between seeing what I'm about to tell you and actually doing it on the test, implementing it, because most students are too nervous. A lot of students, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of students are very nervous about this idea of not being perfect. If you can go into the test and not be perfect, you will do much better, because you're not thinking about, I got to get my goal score or whatever. You're thinking about what question is in front of you. And so if you have a goal, okay, sorry guys, if the screen, can you guys see this? Is the screen blurry for anybody else? If the screen's a little blurry, it's probably because I don't know why it is, actually. Hopefully it's not blurry for anybody else. If it is blurry, guys, you guys can maybe refresh the screen. I'm watching the same YouTube live stream that you guys are seeing. It's not blurry for me. If it's blurry for anybody else, let me know. And I apologize if it is. Okay, but going back to everybody's questions, everybody had the same question. You even saw it today in today's chat, right? If going back to the same questions from today, if you think about this test, right, and Pranav, the one thing I would even say to you is, don't go into this test, okay? Don't go into this test, Pranav, even if you're scoring as exceptionally as you are, don't go in thinking about getting a 1600. We've had a couple teaching assistants who have scored a perfect score on either the SAT or the ACT come on these live streams sometimes, that have worked with us, that have been in these programs or have watched the YouTube videos, and without a doubt, the first thing that every one of them says, and it's how I approached the test, was not to think about getting a perfect score. Whatever you've done on a practice test, back that up 50 points. So Pranav, I would say go into the next test thinking 1550. That is not to say that you take a nap if you have time left, but what it does is it takes pressure off. Because what you guys will see, for even the most exceptional testing scores in the world, you don't have to get every question right to score exceptionally well. For example, Pranav, if you go into the next test thinking 1600, that puts so much stress on every question. You have to get 58 out of 58 on both math sections to get an 800 on the math. But if you think to yourself, you know what, in order to get a 1550 or 1540, let's say, I have to get 770. Well, that means that the 3 hardest questions on math, and if you're scoring that well, you can do this, you can skip the 3 hardest questions that you don't understand. If you know how to do those, but you just need more time, then do those at the end of the test. I know you're going to be a little bit more tired, but that means that you've answered every other easy question that you do know how to answer before putting any weight on the hard question. Every single question, this is the key to the SAT exam. This is why you can do well. It applies to the AP exams too. It applies to the SAT. It applies to any exam that is on a curve that only has or extensively has multiple choice questions, and more importantly has every question of equal value. So if you have free response questions like on the AP Bio exam, AP Bio, you're gonna have more questions can be weighted towards the free response or whatever. When you have an all multiple choice test, even the free response questions on the SAT math section, those are still worth the same value as the free response or as the multiple choice. You just can't guess on those, so that makes them slightly harder. But you still need to figure this out, right? We still need to think about this. Okay, if Pranav goes into the next test thinking 770, that means that you can skip what 3 questions. And if you're already scoring that well in the practice exam, think about how much stress that takes away from the test. Instead of looking at every question being like, I got to know this to get a 1600, you're going into it thinking, oh, I can skip this one because it's really hard, and then the next 10 I'm going to get right because I'm doing exceptionally well, and I don't need to worry about this one question until the end of the exam. Okay? If you're focused on a flip side, right, on a flip question, if you are looking at this test at any level, you need to set a goal number of questions answered correctly. Okay, a goal number of questions answered correctly rather than focusing on an actual score. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Okay? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if this makes sense? And by the way, Nikhil, if you're looking at this, all of our real-time videos are also posted in the description, I hope, below this video. Yep, all the real-time videos, or the vast majority of them, are posted in the description below this video, this live stream. But again, you want to set a goal score for yourself. Wherever your highest practice test has ever been, right? And I'm going to use Pranav as another example, but if anybody else wants to share their practice test score so that I can use you as an example as well, Pranav should be backing up the score 50 points from your best possible practice test score, and that is your goal score. Back it up 50 points. That takes away 5 questions, right? The SAT is really easy to understand in terms of the scoring because every question, one question, right? One question equals 10 points. It's very easy to understand the scoring. If you guys want me to break it down even further, there's 1,600 points available on the SAT, as many of you know. Okay, and there's 154 questions available. There's 154 questions on the test, and roughly speaking, you guys guessed it, good math students out there, right? It's about 10 points per question, if I learned how to spell. 10 points, right? If you guys are looking at this, okay, you need to set your goal score, and then you need to figure out how many questions you need to answer correctly. That's it. That's the key to the test. Okay? You find your goal score. You find your best practice test score probably. If you've taken 2 practice tests and scored a 1,600, or 2 practice tests and scored a 1,400, back that up 50 points to a 1,550 or a 1,350, and that's your goal score for the real exam. So you don't have as much pressure on it. Yeah, so again, the question I was just asked from physics about getting tired when you get to the exam, this whole idea, the reason this is going to work, and I'm going to go into it even further in depth, this is the key to the whole test. If you can implement this on the test, this is the key. When you get tired, right, when you feel overwhelmed, when you have a goal number, not a goal score, when you have a goal score, you guys have never been graded on a 1,600 scale in your lives, ever. That's a true statement. And you won't going forward. I can't think of one other example where you're graded on a 1,600 going forward for the rest of your lives. So that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it means something in the context of the SAT, and for those that have done extensive work with the SAT already, you guys know what that means. But it still doesn't mean anything in the way that a school test means something. And so we can't think about it in that way. Instead, we have to approach it as, if I got a 1,600, right, if I want a 1,600, or if I want a 1,550 or a 1,350 or a 1,200, if I want to improve, how many questions do I need to answer correctly? Because how many questions you answer correctly has always been with you, right? That's always been something. That's everything you've ever done in school is about the number of questions you answer correctly. So approach it in the same way for the SAT. Okay, so let's say for some of you guys out there that want to get a 1,300 on this test, right? A 1,300 would be equivalent of getting a 650 on the math, okay? A 650 on the math, and let's call it, I don't know. I think the reading test is harder than the writing and language, so let's call it a 310 on writing. Let's call it 310 on reading and a 340 on writing and language. Okay, so, and by the way, guys, for those that don't understand the scoring for this is so ridiculous. This is so top of the college board, right? This is so college board it hurts. That they give you 26, 27, 27, even though that just means 270, right? And then they give you the math in hundreds, but they give you the reading and the writing and language in tens, just to confuse you more. I mean, it's just so dumb. But anyway, I digress, right? It drives me crazy every time I have to do that. But let's say you have to get these scores, right? 310 on the reading, 340 on the writing and language, and 650 on the math section. That is, going forward, that's not how you're going to approach it. Now you know what you have to get, right? This is how you get a 1,300, you get a 650 on math, you get a 650 on the other 2 sections combined. You don't approach it from that point forward. You don't approach it in that way. I'm using SAT, just so you guys know, this is the scale for SAT Test 6, okay, on the College Board website or on Khan Academy. This is for SAT Test number 6, and I like to use this scale as my reference point because it's a pretty fair scale. It's pretty even on all sections, right? It's not too hard and it's not too easy. Like if you look at SAT Test 8 on the website and you look at the scale for that, the math section is incredibly difficult, or the scale is incredibly in your favor, the student's favor, because they're deeming the test to be difficult. If you're looking for a scale to reference in terms of setting your goal number, the SAT Test number 6, SAT Test 6 is a great example of this, okay? So that's the one that I always use in these videos, or SAT Test 7 is another good one. But I use one of those two in terms of setting goals for our students and for anybody that's on YouTube. Okay, and as we look at this, now you have a goal in mind. Okay, so for Nikhil, right? If you're struggling with the writing and language section, right, or the English section, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, in order to get a 310 on the reading section, I need to get 39 out of 52 questions right. Okay, 39 out of 52. And that's your goal. Guys, remember that if you get 39 out of 52, that means you can skip an entire passage on the reading section, and still, if you're accurate on the other 4, you'll get better than 39 out of 52. You can just not do an entire passage. Think about that in reference to how much stress that takes off. A 1300 on the SAT is in the top 15% of all students that take this test, if not higher. It might be in the top 10. Of all students in the world that take this test, a 1300 is in the top 10%, top 15% of all students that take this exam. And I am telling you that in order to be in the top 10, 15% of all students, you could skip an entire passage on the SAT reading section, and if you were accurate on the other questions, because you're not stressed about time, you're taking all the time that you would have rushed to get to the last passage, and you're applying it to the other 4 to make sure that you get those questions right, all that additional time you apply to those other 4 so you can be accurate on those. And if you do that, you could skip the entire final passage and still get in the top 10, 15% of all students that take this nationwide. The beauty of this whole method is that it works at every level. Okay, same thing goes, right, Pranav? Going forward is that you don't want to be thinking about what is my score going to be. You want to be thinking about how many questions do I need to get right in order to get this score. You take your highest practice test score from, let's say, the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or highest 2 maybe, and average those 2 together, and you subtract 50 points from that, and that is your goal score on the real exam. You can do better than that. There's no question. I don't want you to take a nap. If you're at a 1550 and you have 5 questions left to get a perfect score, I realize that it would be probably spread out over the 4 sections. But if you have more time left, of course do the extra questions. But by going in thinking about a 1550 instead of a 1600, or a 1500 instead of a 1550, or a 1200 instead of a 1300, it takes so much stress off of the test. You know how many questions you can skip. Okay? Yeah, guys. So guys, if you leave a question, right? This is a great question from Fun Physics here. If you leave a question blank, if you never get back to that question, you're skipping with a purpose, right? You're skipping with a purpose. You're not just skipping to skip. You're skipping with a purpose. So if you don't make it back to that question, okay? If you don't make it back to that question, that's okay. It's the hardest, right? It's the hard question that you skipped for a reason, not just because. So you shouldn't worry about that difficult question until you've answered all of the easiest questions first. At that point, you'll know exactly how much time you have left, how many questions you skipped, right? And then you can go back and maybe try the easiest of the 5 questions you skipped, or whatever, right? But to the physics question point, especially in math, right? If you're going to skip a question based on what we showed you in those real-time videos, you don't need to worry about that question because you're skipping it because you're finding it to be difficult. In those videos, one of the things that I'm adamant about is not just skipping to skip. You're not just skipping questions just to skip them. You're skipping them because you look at them, you read through them, and you're like, man, I don't remember this concept, right? Oh, man. And it's hard to get away from that, especially if you've already seen it in school before. A lot of times we get students who have seen a question, okay? A lot of times we see a student that you've seen a question before. Yes, you know how to factor, but you can't figure out a factoring question. You have to move on. You can review outside of the test. That's where the hard work comes in. But you can't be looking at a factoring question that you don't know how to do when there's 5 questions after that question that you do know how to do. That's the whole key to this test. And like I've been saying, the idea of the score report will help you so much because you go in with a number in mind of how many questions you need to answer. Or more importantly, you go in with a number in mind of how many questions you can skip. I've never seen anybody get a 1600 on this test who had a goal score of 1600 or was thinking about a 1600. Never. I've never seen that. Okay? The reason that I was able to do well on these as a kid and the reason these methods work is because you're while everybody else is struggling on one question, you're just skipping it and totally okay skipping it. And while that person's struggling, and then that question is not only going to affect you for the one you're struggling on, the very next question, think about this, guys. I don't even have to, right? You've done that. I know all of you have been in this situation before. Give me a thumbs up if you've been in the situation where you struggled on a question, you lost all your momentum, and then the very next question, you're only thinking about the last question still, instead of focusing on the question in front of you. Right? How many of you have done that before? I would guarantee that almost everybody has done that. And that is affecting not only the question that's difficult, but the next one that should have been easy, but it's only not easy because you let the other hard one get in the way. If you go into the test thinking about how do I get 55 out of 58 questions right? Right? Pranav, right? It's a great example. Or anybody that's scoring exceptionally highly on this test, and that means you can skip 3 questions. This was the biggest advantage that I had over every other student that took this test as a kid that was much better prepared than I was. I had no issue because I didn't think about it. I had no issue. This was by default. This is just how my mind worked as a kid, that I was looking to get as many questions as I knew how to get right. I knew exactly the number that I needed to get to a certain score. I was competitive. I still wanted to get a 1500 plus score, but 1600, I knew that I would have to work hard for that, and that was never in my wheelhouse. I was not a hard worker as a kid, so I wouldn't do it. But I knew the number that I had to get to 1500, and I knew, well, my mom's a math teacher and I read a lot, so this should be I should be able to do this. Right? I can get a 1500 plus score, and I was content with that. For those that work hard, if you can combine that mindset with hard work, that's how you get to a 1600. The last 100 points on the SAT, the last 10 hardest questions are all about hard work and memorizing every concept that you can, but then being okay when you get to test day, right? Being okay not getting that score, that you didn't have your best day. And then when the best day rolls around, boom, there's your 1600. But you don't go in expecting it to be, you don't expect every day to be your best day. Okay? Okay, 45 out of 52. Yeah, so it's a great question there. So, Guru, I know that you've been on before. It's a great question. So if you're trying to get, right, 40 or 45, yeah, so Pranav just pointed it out, right? 40 out of 45 is a 310. Okay, 45. Think about that, guys. 45 is a 350. If you score in 700 plus, right, which would be a 350 equivalent, right, if you got the same on the writing and language section, if you score 700 plus or 350 plus on any section, exactly, physics, that's exactly right. You should not ever focus on the score. You should set a goal score. I shouldn't say you should never focus on it. You should set a goal score, take your last 2 practice tests, or take your last test or your best test that you've ever taken on a practice test. Subtract 50 points from that score, and that's your goal score. After you have your goal score, you never think about the score again. You think about the number of questions it's going to take you on each section to get that score. If you're better at math and your expectation is to get to 800 on the math section so that you have a little bit more, right, give on the other 2 sections, that's fine. Don't maybe set it at an 800 on math, but some of you, there are students in here, I'm sure, that are watching that are very capable of getting an 800 on the math section every time. Some of you guys are definitely smarter than I am at math. There's no question, even though you're younger than I am. So if that's your expectation, then you apply it to yourself. If 1500 is your goal score and you feel like you can get an 800 on math, maybe set your goal at 790 or 780, just so again you can take some of that pressure off. But 790, and then you only have to get a 710 on the other 2 sections. That takes a lot of pressure off your 2 worst sections. Be strategic, be objective, be mathematical about how you're approaching this test. Don't just go in expecting a score and then if it doesn't happen, well, what did I do wrong? Be strategic, just like all of you guys are in every other aspect of your lives. Yeah, so Pranav, I know, and I obviously we've dealt with a number of Indian students. If you guys are from India, you are unbelievably exceptional at math. That is just a fact. I couldn't agree with you more. The technical aspects of Indian education is unbelievable, right? And that's why, I mean, to all of you guys that are Indian out there, that's why the chairman and CEO of Microsoft is Indian. The chairman and CEO of Google is Indian. Right, I mean, there's a reason for that because it's unbelievable how technically sound the Indian math and science curriculum is. So you guys should be very proud of how well you do. Okay, so and take it, but Pranav, right? If you can get an 800 on the math section, figure out what it's going to take to get a 750 or a 740 on the reading and writing and language, and set that goal for yourself. If you're better at reading or if you're better at writing and language, then don't set the equal goals. You guys will notice, right, that I set a 310 on the reading section because for the most part, students are worse at the reading section than the writing and language section overall. Okay? For the most part. For me, the reading section was always the one section I never had to worry about because I knew I just was a big reader. I loved to read. Okay? So again, set your goal score. For kind of a final thing here, just for regarding scores here, not to set the scores. I don't want anybody to think that 1550 has to be the goal score here. I always try to set goal scores for like most students. I think the average student thinks that a 1300 on this test. Okay. Okay. So most students, right? If you score a 1300, you are in the top 10. If you're watching these videos, my guess is that your goal score is 1300. Okay, that you would love, or you would love to get a 1300. If you get a 1300 on this test, that's the score that I try to use in these videos. That means you have to get a 650, right? And as I told Pranav just a second ago, if you're better at one section, then don't set it equal. But generally speaking, you have to get a 650. If you have to give or take a little bit from those scores and add it to the other one because you're better at one section, you get a 700 in math, then you only have to get a 600 on the other two. Okay, but then go up here and figure out what is it going to take for me to get a 650 on the math section. Let me show you guys this, right? This is incredible. Okay, let me show you this. If you got a 43, right? Think about this. For every student that's struggling and trying to figure out, you do well in school. If you do well in school, that means you work hard. And I can't tell you how much of a better trait that is than being a good test taker. That's not a slight to anybody that's a good test taker that's watching, but it's true. I would have given anything as a 16, 17-year-old. I did well in these tests. I did well in tests always as a kid because I just went in and took it. I never prepared. That's a bad trait. It's a really bad trait. Coincidentally, as Pranav said, because my mom was a math teacher, I was accelerated in math. That was the only reason. So I was, doing stuff that was comparable. But you guys know that the SAT math curriculum is not very hard. It only goes up to Algebra 2. Okay, so if you know that, then you got to apply this, and you got to think to yourself: if I'm looking to get a 1300, which by the way, again, a 1300 is in the top. I'm gonna take the middle here, and I'm gonna say it's top 12%. I can look it up if you guys really want, but let's call it top 12%. Or if anybody does want to look this up, you guys can just search 1300 SAT national percentile, and it'll give it to you. Top 12%, let's call it. Okay, if anybody wants to look it up to verify so that we can come up with a real number, that'd be great. It might even be higher than that, but in any case, if you're trying to get a 43, right, to get to a 1300 score would mean that you needed, on average, a 43 out of 58 on the math test. 43 out of 58, guys, think about that. If you got 43 out of 58 right on a school test, so what's that, 10%? You're talking like that. That's just above. Let's call it 71%. If anybody has a calculator, it's going to be somewhere close to that. But okay, it's somewhere around 71%, maybe a little bit higher, 72. But 71% on this test, right? If you did that in school, that would be a C minus on the American education scale. That would be a C minus. Yet if you did that on this test, you would be in the top 12%. You'd be 88%, meaning that because of the way this test is scaled and the understanding of how this scoring format works, that if you were to just sit down and take this like a school test and you were focused on that number of questions, if you got a C minus in school, you would get a B plus on this test. Think about that. Okay, think about that and how much stress that takes away. if you don't approach the test in this way, I hate to say it, but you are objectively approaching it wrong. Okay, I couldn't stand when I worked for other companies when tutors, because tutors and teachers, there is not all. Some tutors and teachers are great, but a lot. Sometimes you get on these sites or we had tutors and teachers that would work, and it was like if you didn't do it this way, you were wrong. Okay, and I would never tell you guys to do a strategy while you're taking the test, that there's a right or a wrong way to do a certain strategy. But what I can tell you is, objectively speaking, from a mathematical perspective, this is not in question, that if you were to sit down and take this like a school test, you would get a 17 percentage point bump. And so if you're not thinking about it in this way, understanding the scoring in this way, right, you're just approaching it incorrectly, because it's from a mathematical objective perspective. That's not me just saying it. That's what drove me crazy. It's like, well, you're wrong if you do this reading strategy. If you skim, you're wrong. Who knows? That's such a bad way for a teacher to approach you guys. Okay, I don't know what the right strategy is. I don't know what the right strategy is. It's different for every student. I have thoughts on it based on the number of students that I've worked with, and I can provide those thoughts. Okay, but beyond that, from a mathematical standpoint, the way that you have to approach this, the only thing that I am certain of is how this scoring works. And I am also certain that this worked extremely well for me when I was a kid, when I didn't put in the time and the effort. But I knew that if I went in and I wanted to get a 1,500 plus score, that I was looking to get somewhere, I could skip 5 questions on the math test. And lo and behold, right, I would do that. I would literally tally up or know exactly how many questions I had skipped throughout the test. I wasn't thinking about the number of questions I was getting right. Whatever was in front of me, I was focused on the question in front of me to answer it correctly, but really I was thinking about how many questions I had skipped at that point. So that because I knew what goal score I had in mind. And then I skipped 5. If those were all 5 multiple choice, which actually is how it was back in the day on the SAT, okay, there was no free response math questions. If I skipped 5 and I guessed on the remaining questions, I was going to get 1 right mathematically, but if you use our guessing method, if you guys have seen those videos, I was probably going to get 2 questions right? If I got 2 right by guessing on multiple choice, I got 770. And that puts you at a 1540 if you can match that on the reading and writing and language section. Exactly. Guru Ram just said it perfectly. Focus on the process, not the result. You couldn't say it any better than that. It's the same thing as focus on what you're doing, right? What's in front of you, not how you're doing. How am I doing? How's my score? What am I getting, right? It's what am I doing right now? What's in front of me? Focus on the process, not the result. That's the best way to say it. Okay? Again, if you're looking for a 650, focus on that. You can miss 15 questions. The 15 hardest questions on the math section, if you're getting you can skip those 15. Okay? If you are looking for that same score on the reading, writing, and language section, okay, focus on which one of those sections based on your practice tests you're better. Let's say you want a 310. That means you got to get 39 questions right on the reading section. Okay? 39. Look at this. 39 out of 52. That's like a 78%, right? 78% on the reading. You can skip an entire passage and still score in the top 12% of all students that take this exam. Okay, and then on the writing and language, in order to match that, you'd have to get 36 out of 44. Right? Just above an 80%. You can get like an 81% or so, somewhere in there. Get like an 81%, 82%. Okay, somewhere in there. And you'd still score in the top 12%. You'd be infinitely higher than what the percentages would break down because of the way this test is scaled. And if you don't believe me, as a final note, this was always a thing. If you just sit down and write your name, you get 200 points. Okay? That's the test scale right there. If you sit down, you get 200 points. You don't get that in a school test. And that's why this scale, it gets tighter and tighter as you get better and better, as your scores improve. But that's why the scale works. Okay, yeah, so yeah, guys, it's going to work on every test you ever take. This works on the AP exams, too. The AP exams are scaled, and they're even more favorably scaled for students. The AP Calculus BC exam, I think you can get, I don't tutor it anymore, but I used to tutor AP Calc BC. I think you can get 60% of the questions right. If you get a 60%, you get a 5, or it's like 65% maybe. There's a couple of the AP science exams are the same way. Guru Ram, when you look at those tests, so the first thing that I would say, so Ram, the first thing that I would say is that when you take your practice tests, if you guys haven't seen this before, I'd highly recommend this. When you take your practice test for the writing and language section, you have to make sure you understand which questions you're getting right and which ones you're getting wrong. And what I mean by that is which question types. So what I would do for anybody that's struggling on the ACT English, okay, yeah, Pranav, 63%. Yeah, I knew it was somewhere around there. I couldn't. It's been a while since I've looked at AP Calc BC content, but yeah, it's right. I mean, think about that. You could get a D- in school, and on the AP Calc BC exam, that's a 5, right? And that would then be applicable to any school you've ever applied to. Okay. Ram here. Let's see. So anybody, and this is particularly true of writing and language and math. If you guys are struggling on writing and language or ACT English or any of the math sections, the advanced score reports that I just posted are exceptionally good help. Okay, they're all free. They're all on our website. I would highly recommend that you guys do that. Let me show you why that's so important, Ron. Yeah, so guys, if you're having questions about the 99th percentile, the reason it's the 99th percentile, right, is because it's the 99th percentile, right? There's not that many students scoring in that. There's not a lot of students. Okay, so yeah, that's why it would be the 99th percentile. There's only 1% of students. It's statistical. There's actually only that number. Yeah, so as Pranav just said, it's percentile, the number of students scoring in that, rather than percentage. It's not 99% out of 100. It's the 99th percentile of students, so you're in the top 1%. So out of 1 million students, if you're scoring 1,500 plus, which is in the top 1%, 1,500 plus, the top 1%, that means that of the 2 million students that take this every year, only 20,000, is that right, Matt? 20,000? Yeah, 20,000 are scoring 1,500 plus. Okay, and if you guys are asking, like, well, how does MIT or Harvard or Stanford, how do they have so many applicants that are in that range? Well, it's because all 20,000 of those students then apply to those same schools, right? So that's why if you're wondering how they could have such high numbers, that's the reason. Okay. So guys, here's the score report. So, but going back to Ram's question here, if you guys haven't seen this before, this is for SAT test number 8. But Ram, the biggest question you need to ask yourself with regards to your writing and language section is what type of questions you're missing. So I think we have 10 advanced score reports on the website. If you go into those advanced score reports, you need to figure out what types of questions. If you're missing grammar questions, you just need to do more review of grammar. And the beauty of this is in this technique, for anybody that's looking at this in the far right column here, this technique is saying that it tells you exactly which question types you're looking at. And so you'll see here, like everybody should see on test number 8, number 4 here is punctuation, the 4th one down. Well, guys, if you're missing that punctuation question, these all correspond directly to every single unit within StarU. Every single one. If you look at that, right, the 3rd one was parallelism. Well, lo and behold, here's parallelism. So if you miss that question, it's very important that you do everything in your power to just review that. If you're missing the main idea questions, right, where should I plug this in, organization, all that kind of question, all those questions, okay, you can come into here. Where's that one? I forget where it is, but you can. In any case, you can come in and you can look at those as well. Yeah, exactly. So to the question about the 99th percentile, it's about how many students score in that range. Now the whole test is graded on a bell curve. Okay, so it's all graded on a bell curve based on the number of students that take it. Yeah, exactly. Pranav just said it perfectly. Yeah, it's basically the number of students that you passed is how they create those percentiles. Ram, does that make sense? Guru Ram, can you give me a thumbs up if that makes sense in terms of how I want you to approach these? How I want you to approach these, right? If you look at this, I want you to see informational graphics, right, or apostrophes and confused words, and then I want you to go back and make sure that you memorize those, right? I mean, the writing and language section, the reason I said that it's easier than the reading section, no, guys, yeah, these are all great questions, so you never have to apologize. These are all great questions. If you guys ever have, If you guys ever have questions like these, never apologize. And Pranav, thanks for answering that, because that's exactly right. You actually said it better than I did. It's how many people essentially that you're ahead of. Okay, but if you're missing, especially on writing and language, and especially on the math tests, if you guys are struggling with either of those sections, you can come down. You scroll down, right? You guys can see that, like, if you're missing a linear equations question, now you can see, then this is my screen. This is the math section. Right? If you're missing linear equations, it's very important that you go memorize linear equations. Everything that you can possibly learn about y equals mx plus b should be memorized. Okay? It's very, very, very critical that you approach this in a way that's going to help you improve, and that you approach it efficiently. Right? That you approach it efficiently rather than, rather than spinning your wheels. Because I realize how frustrating it is to keep getting the same score, not figuring out why you're improving. Very, very important, right? Yeah, guys, in terms of extracurricular activities, for anybody that's this year is going to be particularly unique with extracurricular activities because of the pandemic. So if you don't have as many extracurricular activities, but you're a junior, right, or American 12th, if you're in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, I guess not 12th because you get that they've already applied, but if you're in a sophomore or junior, 10th or 11th grade, don't worry as much about extracurriculars. Okay, they do look for those in a big way, but don't worry. I only mean that you should always worry about those. But I mean, don't worry this year if you're not able to do as much because of the pandemic. There's just not been as many opportunities to do things, is really what I'm getting at. Okay, but yeah, it's always important, but just don't set the expectation. Like if you read about extracurriculars from a college website or something, don't be as concerned this year. And there's a place within the application, the common application, where you can actually type in, like there's a 500-word space. Okay, there's a 500-word space within the common application where you can actually type in why maybe you didn't have as many extracurriculars, but they're going to understand it. This year they're going to understand it better than any other year. Yeah, if you did a lot of extracurriculars, I think that any extracurriculars are always going to help you. I think like these test scores with test optional, I think that the test won't hurt you, right? Not submitting a score, not doing as many extracurriculars, I don't think that's going to hurt you. But I think that if you do more, or if you get a better test score, or you do submit a good test score, that will only help you. Okay, I think that I think it's always going to help if you can do more. But I really think that colleges are taking a very, very real approach. There's always that question about, like, well, test optional, is it really test optional? I think that if you have a reason for why maybe you weren't able to take a test, right? You weren't able to take the SAT or ACT because it was canceled everywhere that you tried to take it, they'll understand that. And again, on the common application for college, you'll see an area of 500 words where you can actually explain maybe why you didn't do extracurriculars, and it's very easy to just say it was because of COVID. No, extracurriculars absolutely does not have to be educational based. You can do volunteer work. Yep, all that stuff. Yep, all of that stuff is great. No, yeah, again, it's not going to reduce, guys, the score. If you have a reason for why you didn't take the test, if you're looking at top technical universities like MIT, they might say they're test optional, but realistically, MIT is not test optional. If you're looking at top technical colleges, the only way that you could probably get away with it, if you're any STEM program, right? If you're looking to go into math or computer science or anything like that, the only way you could get away from it is if you legitimately couldn't take the test in your region or your state or your country because of the pandemic. If you can show them, and there's ways to show this, they will not. You'll have to show other things like AP testing can all be done online, so you'll have to show your AP test scores for AP math, right? So because that one doesn't have the same, you can take that test online. Guys, this is all true. The MIT, you need more than the SAT to get in as well. Yeah, that doesn't take away from the extracurriculars. MIT just needs to see. They just need to see. They just need to see that you can take these tests because it's so test. Like if you go to MIT or you go to any technical school, any technical program, if you go to Stanford and you computer engineer, you're so test heavy in those programs that you have to be able to take a test. But yeah, even if you get a really good score, there's so many students. Like I said, the 20,000 students that are in the top 1% will all apply to Stanford and MIT and Harvard and all those great schools. And so you'll need to have more than just the test score. It's going to be like a sorting method almost. Like if I have this score, I'm not discounted. And then if you don't have a score because you weren't able to take it, you'll just have to do well on the AP. Like if you get an AP Calc BC 5, then they'll take that away. They'll take that into consideration that you didn't take the SAT, right? But because you couldn't, but you also did really well in the AP exams. And that's what they're looking for, because the AP test is just a test. They're just looking to see if you can be a good test taker in those programs. Okay? Guys, yeah, Harvard Medical School, unbelievable. That is unbelievable. Okay? So guys, any other general questions? I'm going to sign off now. Like I said, it doesn't look like for the students that are nonprofits are great, guys, absolutely. You really can't go wrong with volunteer work or anything. Like if you have a job too, that's always helpful. Oh, Harvard Medical School? Yeah, guys, if you're in college, that's a good question. Harvard Medical School, you got to get a really, really good MCAT score, of course, like an unbelievable MCAT score to go to Harvard Med. And then I would be doing as much lab work. Like if you can work in the lab, if you're a physics major or chem major, you got to be doing lab work. They're going to look at that heavily. And then probably the last thing is to be doing as much as you can at a local hospital. You have to have real world experience if you're going to go to Harvard Med, and you have to have a really high test score. Okay, hard work, yeah, but that's Harvard Med is unbelievable, of course. All right, guys. So again, like I said, I'm going to sign off here. Looks like hopefully this was helpful. Can you guys give me one more thumbs up if you felt like this was helpful? On another note, if you guys have any other questions, you can always comment below these videos. If you have questions that were unanswered or that you come up with after this is over, you guys can always comment below these videos, and we'll of course respond to those. Presidential Award, of course, is very helpful. Of course, if you get a Presidential Service Award, that is extremely helpful. So of course, that's something you want to put down on your resume. Of course. Okay. But yeah, guys, please help us spread the word. I'd love it if you guys could. We want to make more of these YouTube videos. I have plenty of content that I could continue to put out and continue to do this, but we'd like to be doing this full time. So if you guys have any friends that haven't subscribed to the channel, please help us spread the word about it. And yeah, guys, again, thanks so much for supporting it. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, guys, if you have one last thing, if you have any questions, okay, if you have any questions, please, if you have any questions that were unanswered or that you come up with after this video is over, this live stream is over, you guys can always comment below these videos, and one of our teachers or tutors will always respond. Okay? Thanks, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend wherever you are in the world. Get some sleep if it's late at night, wherever you are. And yeah, guys, you guys are great. You guys are awesome. So keep it up, and we'll see you guys on the next live stream, which will be this. If you're taking the June 5th test, one last thing, sorry. The June 5th test, we're going to have that I'll post about, a comprehensive SAT review this coming Thursday evening. We'll have a full comprehensive SAT review for the test that's next Saturday, for the June test. All right, great job, absolutely, Nikhil, no problem, guys. Everybody, great job, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, great weekend.